Lord, I surrender to you completely. Yeah. Falling is easy, but I'm learning to fly. I'm learning to fly to mount upon eagle's wings, soaring so high, chasing those blue skies. All my hope in you, I know my strength will be renewed as I'm learning to fly.
All right, this is Pastor Jerry Smart from Winston, Oregon, Foursquare Gospel Center, and I'm here with Chris Sligh, American Idol finalist from season 6.
Yep, season 6.
And so we, trying to create resources for worship artists and worship leaders, and so I asked Chris if he'd be willing to come in and share a few things with us. Had a couple of things I wanted to ask you, Chris, and one of them is I was looking at Wikipedia. If you can believe everything you see on the internet, I always do.
Right.
I see that your parents were missionaries.
Correct. My parents were missionaries, grew up in a ministry home, and have been doing ministry my whole adult life. So pretty much since I was born, I've been in ministry of some sort.
Mm-hmm. All right. And you went to Bob Jones University.
I did.
And there was an incident where you went to a For Him concert and they didn't like that.
Right, yeah, apparently any kind of thing with a rock beat is considered sinful at Bob Jones, and so I was asked not to return to college. I wasn't kicked out, let's make that clear.
Well, For Him is pretty extreme.
Yeah, For Him is, for those of you that don't know, for those of you who don't know who For Him is, think the Backstreet Boys and then older and not as cool.
They don't do all the dance moves.
Right.
They don't do the dancing.
For Him was one of my favorite bands.
I love For Him. One of my favorite For Him songs is Man You Would Write About.
Yep.
I love that song. So that just shows you what decade I grew up in.
Yeah, you're old, man. It's all good.
So I wanted to ask you a little bit about your American Idol experience, because I know that we all have seasons in our life where we kind of grow exponentially, and I'm assuming that was a time like that for you, because you had a lot of exposure to different things that you had never had exposure to, and you also had coaching from people.
It wasn't really the American Idol experience for me. I had been doing music professionally for like 7 years before American Idol. I had put out 5 albums before I was on American Idol. I had been traveling. My band did 85 shows the year before I was on American Idol. So we had been doing it, and I had been a worship leader at a church. I was working at a church in South Carolina called Seacoast Church. I was at the Greenville, South Carolina campus, and so I had been a youth pastor at a large church, helped start a church as a worship leader. So at that point, I had just tons and tons and tons of experience. I think it was after American Idol, I was able to kind of take these next steps in. Now, almost everything I do feeds off of what happened since American Idol. Because I am a worship pastor at a church in Texas called Shoreline Church.
Where in Texas?
It's in Austin.
Okay.
It's about 7,000 people. I have 150-ish to 200 people on my teams, and I don't think that I could have done that without the experience that I've had since American Idol. Because after I got off of American Idol, I went straight into the studio and recorded an album with a guy named Brown Bannister, who is just one of the greatest producers ever in Christian music, and also happens to be one of the godliest men I've ever met. Just kind and sweet and loves Jesus with all of his heart. And even though we weren't making a worship record, there were tons of worshipful moments as we recorded that record. And so but in that record, making that album, I was able to work with a bunch of A-level session players. And so for me, what I took away from that is I just kind of gleaned from these guys, like, what makes the A-level session players different than...
That was going to be one of my questions.
What makes those guys different than the average church musician? And this is what I've come to, and I'm actually in the midst of writing a worship book right now that kind of, it's less philosophy. I feel like what we have right now in church is a lot of philosophy about worship, but not a lot of practical stuff about worship. So basically my book's premise is that is that as a worship leader, you can get your musicians to, they'll never be as good as Jerry McPherson, likely. You know, Jerry McPherson has been playing, he played with Amy Grant, now plays with Faith Hill.
Is he the one that does like the dobro too and stuff?
Yeah, he does. He plays just about everything with strings. Yeah. And so, like Jerry, you know, one of the things that I talked to him about, that I asked him questions about was, you know, kind of what, he was like, you know, yeah, there are riffs in his fingers that he's just played so many times that he can just pull out at any point. But really what it comes down to, when Jerry shows up to a gig, he has, number one, he's listened to the music tons. Okay. He knows the music backwards and forwards. And granted, you know, when you've been doing, like I'm at a place in my career where I've been doing this for, you know, 15 years professionally. I've been doing it, you know, I was a music major, so I studied theory. At this point, I can hear a chord progression, and I can automatically know what a chord progression is. I know how to play that chord progression. So there is some of that comes with experience. But so much of it is being able to listen to music and pick out what it is that you're supposed to do, and then preparing. And so all these guys have a way that they prepare. And this is where church musicians, I think, miss it. Okay. Is they think that rehearsal on Thursday night or Wednesday night or whatever your church does it, they think that rehearsal is the time to learn the songs. And so they show up and they go, meanwhile your band is never quite gelling because you're never able, you're learning songs instead of rehearsing them. Rehearsal is supposed to be a time where you get together. So like in my ministry, I expect my guys to show up prepared. I expect for them to show up on time. And I expect them to show up knowing the songs backwards and forwards, so that if I can say, guys, we're going to repeat a chorus here, and they know what I mean by a chorus. Or, hey, let's repeat that bridge. Or let's put the bridge at the end of the song, and they understand what I mean by bridge.
Because they spent time at home or somewhere in advance preparing and practicing before they
learning the chord progression. And see, the thing is and another thing that I'm maybe lucky in is that I play everything except for drums well enough that I can lead from those instruments. So when a bass player is struggling, I can pick up a bass and show them the part that they're supposed to play. With guitar, which is my main instrument, with a guitar, you know, worship music is actually very, very easy to play. You know, it's actually one of the easier things. You just need a delay. If you're a guitar player, you need a delay pedal, you need a distortion pedal, or an overdrive pedal, and that's really about it. And you have to learn the hook that happens at the beginning of the song, and it happens at the end of the song, and usually happens after the second chorus. I mean, the first chorus. And then otherwise you're playing like arpeggios and that kind of thing. And there might be a part on the second verse, but really there's like 3 parts that you have to learn. But most people don't think of it in that. They think, I've got to learn a 4.5 minute song. Like, how am I going to remember all these 4.5 minutes? But when you break it down and teaching, you know, these guys how to break a song down so that it's not 4.5 minutes, it's really, you're only playing like a minute and 15 seconds worth of music.
Yeah, because a lot of it, I mean...
you're repeating the same things.
You're repeating the same phrases.
And so if you can get these guys to learn the parts in that way and breaking it down, it makes it so much easier for these volunteer musicians. Because, you know, my church in Austin, we're lucky enough that we're able to pay musicians. But the majority of churches, it's like 85 to 90% of churches are less than 300 people in America. And so for every mega church that has, you know, that's as big as the church that I'm able to work at, there are 10, you know, churches that are 300 or less. And so most of these churches are trying to do music as good as they can. They're trying to do it, you know, as passionately as they can, and they're trying to do it with musicians that are maybe not at a level where they will ever be great, because they work 60 hours a week, and the idea of practicing 20 hours a week is impossible. But what I think we can encourage people to do is we go, if you practice 3 hours a week, if you can just sit with music and listen and learn these parts, that, you know, that we do this 3 hours a week, you will come in and be really, really good for this ministry.
For most people, if they just simply, if you want to look at it like tithes their TV time or their internet time and say, I'm going to take a portion of what I would have normally spent on the TV or on the internet, and I'm going to learn these songs or practice my instrument, that would go a long ways.
Yep. And so much of this is about, practicalities of, I've been lucky enough that I've done everything. I've used volunteer musicians, I've paid musicians. I was on the road for 4.5 years with one of the best bands that I'll ever play with, probably ever, and anyone gets to play with. And just learning from these guys and watching how they do things. It really comes down to, it's less about this and more about this.
And being around really good, like A-list musicians, like you were saying, do you find that you play better and that you perform better when you're around them?
Well, it's not
like
necessarily,
they just draw it out of you, kind of, to some degree.
I don't know that it's necessarily that I play better with them, but it's just I learned so much from them. When you've got a drummer who, like I play with a click everywhere. So my drummer is always has click going to his ears.
Right.
And for those of you that don't know, click is just a metronome. You've got a metronome going.
So you have like an in-ear monitor, and that's where you hear the click?
Actually, I've done it a lot of ways. Like when I was out on the road, my band didn't have, we didn't have in-ear monitors. So the only person who was on click was the drummer.
Okay.
And so he would just keep and this is one of those practical things that churches can really hold on to is having a click is going to keep your band tighter. It's going to automatically keep you tighter. If you've got a drummer, and then, in parts where, maybe a worship leader starts a song without drums, you just have like him keeping like an eighth note or a quarter note on the ride or on the hi-hat,
Right.
keeping that so that the band stays together. Keeping it to a click, because another thing with volunteer musicians is they start to get passionate. You're singing How He Loves or whatever song is like your favorite big ballad. And when things get big, amateur musicians tend to slow down, and when things get, on an upbeat song, when you get to that big chorus, people start to push ahead a little bit,
Right.
And so I think that staying with a click and having a drummer who just, I put it like this, is that a drummer should always be leading the band rhythmically.
Right.
That doesn't mean that he's leading rehearsal or anything like that. I think we as worship leaders should be leading rehearsal, but the drummer should be the one that a worship leader is able to kind of lean back and trust that his drummer is keeping him in time.
Right. Yeah.
And so, not every church has a drummer who can play the click. I was at a mega church in Colorado that when I first got there, we had a drummer who could not play with a click. And he had 2 fills, and one of them went 4.5. He thought they were 4 beats, but they went 4.5. One of them, and then the other one was 5 beats. So he would start whenever he started his tom fill, you just kind of sit back and wait for the downbeat for a second. So I've worked with those kind of drummers too.
Yeah.
But I think that what, maybe going back to your original question about playing with people, what it did, yes, it does raise my level when I'm playing with them, but also it raised my level coming away from that and knowing what I can expect from people, and how to push people towards those things.
Yeah.
And I think that sometimes as worship leaders, we're so scared that we're going to lose volunteers by expecting more of them. And the way I put it is like this: people want to be led, they just don't know that they want to be led.
Right.
And what I mean by that is that they want to be led well. They don't want you to lead them by going, that didn't work. Why? You as a worship leader should never utter the words, I don't know why it doesn't work, but something's not working. That's the worst thing you can do, because a band just goes, well, it's like they go, it's not me. If he can't figure it out, you should be able to hear and go, okay, process through, okay, something's not quite right. Rhythmically, probably if you know that your drummer's staying in time, you know that you're staying in time with the drummer, likely the problem is going to be something with the guitars, or if the piano's being too busy or the keyboard's being too busy. And so being able to process like, okay, I can figure out what's wrong with this situation, then turn around and you quietly, like the way that I handle it is, if it's something that's going to be touchy, I'll just go straight over to the keyboard player and kind of lean over and be like, hey, I need you to be a little bit less busy. Or guitar player, like, hey man, I really need you to listen to this song between now and Sunday because it's just not working right now. And leading in ways that are, I think sometimes it's so hard. You got to lead with vision, man. Like, you got to go, the reason why we want to be excellent is not so that we can pat ourselves on the back and go, we're awesome. The reason why we want to be excellent is because we believe that God is worthy of our praise. We believe that God is worthy of our excellence.
Right.
And so we give Him our best. And our best means that we are going to practice. Our best means that we are going to show up knowing the songs. It's disrespectful to the other people in the band.
Yeah.
It's disrespectful to God, to be frank, for us to show up unprepared.
We want to give Him our best.
Correct.
Yeah. Well, I want to ask you, what are you doing now? I know that here in our town you're currently touring with Phil Stacy and...
Yep. I'm on a 10-day tour with Phil, and then I go back to my church in Austin, and we get ready for our Christmas program, and we're doing a pretty massive 3-week thing over Sundays, and that's going to be crazy. But yeah, just leading worship, man. That's what I do.
Do you have any music out right now that you want to tell us about?
Yeah, I've got a new album. It just came out. You can get it at chrissligh.com.
Okay.
And I'm super excited about this album because it's really different than anything I've ever done. It's a triple album. It's 37 songs for $15.
Okay. Wow.
And so better than iTunes. And it's going on iTunes in January, February, and it's going to be like $27 for the thing on iTunes.
Okay.
You can get it from my website for $15 right now.
Right.
But it's a triple album, and so what I was able to do is, it's called This Is Life, and so I wanted to, it's kind of a little bit of a concept album where it's 3 separate kind of collections of songs. The first one is like worship songs, congregational worship songs that you would do in your church, you can do in your church. I've led all of these songs in my churches that I've been in, and some work better than others, and it depends on the situation.
Are these worship songs you've written?
Yeah, they're worship songs that I've written, and they really are like, I wrote each of them for a separate place. One of the things I'm always looking for as a worship leader is up-tempo openers, like to open up a service, something that all the people in the lobby hear and want to come in, while at the same time the people who are there can worship with. Right, yeah. So I have 3 or 4 of those kind of songs. I've got, just songs that are passionate cries for worship, that's the first album. The second album is love songs. It's like a relationship songs, like I wrote a song for my daughter who's 3, and talking about how I want to be a good man. I've got love songs to my wife. And then the last album is life songs. So kind of the songs that you would hear on Christian radio, that kind of thing. Like songs about life from a Christian worldview. So it kind of encompasses like everything that we are as believers. You've got worship. So, if you buy this album, one day when you're doing your devotions, you might want to listen to the worship album while you're doing your devotions. You're getting ready for church on Sunday morning. Maybe the next time you want to, listen to some love songs and just put a smile on your face. And then there's songs that are going to challenge your faith.
Yeah. Okay, so that's chrissligh.com.
chrissligh.com.
And right now you get them for 50 cents each, about roughly.
Yep.
Those songs, or else get them on iTunes after January. I think that's all I wanted to ask you. So on an American Idol, you never got that tear from David Hasselhoff.
No, I did not.
But you did get a standing ovation from Paula.
That's true.
Lots of the rest of us. I mean, I voted for you, man, and I'm really proud of what you've done since then. And I'm glad to have you in the kingdom and working for the Lord. So
it's good to be here. Well, thanks for having me.
It's good to have you here. Thank you so much for talking to us.
Thanks, man.
Appreciate it.
Going through a time in my life, that same time where I was learning how to fly, learning how to trust God, trust that everything that He has for me is exactly what I need and exactly what He called for. And but at the time I was writing this song, I had the questions of why God was doing what He was doing, and I wrote this song called Why. I'm ill at ease with the weight on my shoulder, trying to be something I'm not, but the wheel never stops. says I'm just getting older, stuck in this maze, wandering around while my world tumbles down. So why hide your face from me? Why, when all that I've tried to be is right in your eyes? So why do you hide? Why do you hide? Why? This kingdom of mine is yours for the taking, but I know you'll find my treasure is small, but you've got it all. So why hide your face from me? Why, when all that I've tried to be is right in your eyes? So why do you hide? Why do you hide? Why? You said you'd be more than what I would need, but all that I need is to see your face, God. Why hide your face from me? Why, when all that I've tried to be is right in your eyes? So why do you hide? Why do you hide? Why do you hide? Why? God, I'll trust in you, even though I can't